A famous song once said, "It's electric, boogie woogie woogie." Electric slide references aside, electricity powers are indeed popular in all forms of media, including fighting games. How popular? Let's find out. To get on this list, these fighting game characters simply have to fight primarily with electricity in their moveset, or something similar, like thunder and lightning. Easy criteria. The only restriction is one character per series of origin. However, characters that originated outside of fighting games are still valid for this list. As long as they were playable in a fighting game at some point, they're good to go. Now, I'll shock you with my top 10 electric fighting game characters. Number 10, Akatsuki from Akatsuki Blitzkampf and Under Night in Birth. Like many people I know, I first learned about this guy in the Under Night games, but he actually first appeared in an obscure fighting game series called Akatsuki Blitzkampf, where he was the main character. Years after that series faded away, Under Night recruited Akatsuki to their game, and now he's right at home with the Under Night crew. Because he's not related to any of the main characters in Under Night, his story in the game involves him mainly trying to figure out where even is he. His game was set in some 1940s futuristic sci-fi inspired world, where he woke up after being cryogenically frozen for about 50 years, so regardless of the game he's in, the world is always a bit too modern for him. But he doesn't care, since his only goal is to eliminate all obstacles in his way. It's almost comical how serious Akatsuki is. He has this look of perpetual anger on his face, not unbridled rage anger, but more like mildly perturbed anger, as if he's getting bothered by the Animaniacs. Akatsuki looks like he doesn't enjoy having fun. His fighting style is straight to the point, using a military style that focuses on quick strikes for quick victories, but because he's a super soldier, he has top secret technology in him called the Blitz motor. This motor electrifies his already strong attacks. Now each punch and kick have a bit of zap to them. He can't fully rely on it since it will shorten his lifespan if he uses it too much, but it adds the perfect mix of physical and electrical combat to his arsenal. Another unintentionally funny thing about him is that his technology is what helps him stay at the power level of all the other supernatural powers that the Under Night cast has. So in a way, he's brute forcing his way through all these superhuman and mystical elements in the series. Hey, there's no problem with that when it gets the job done. Number 9, Black Adam in the Injustice series. Injustice has two major lightning users from the DC Comics universe, Billy Batson aka Shazam aka Captain Marvel of DC Comics, and Black Adam, both of them getting their powers from the wizard Shazam, but being very different people who took different paths in life. While Shazam aka Captain Marvel is the hero of the two and has a cool grappling style mixed with his lightning, I more like the variety of attacks that Black Adam has. Plus, another point for Black Adam is he was in the first two Injustice games, unlike Shazam who was only in the first one. Though, to be fair, Shazam had an excuse for not being in the second game, since Dictator Superman kinda, yeah. Even though Black Adam has quite the storied history in the comics, he really only acts as one of Dictator Superman's various underlings in the Injustice story. He's not a brainless goon, but he's mostly just there for filler fights against a villain despite his higher power level in the canon. He'll team up with the heroes when there's a greater evil, but if he's the greater evil, he'll just throw cars from the street at good Superman. Superman, those cars were actually driving. They weren't just parked. Why are you zapping them so nonchalantly? Maybe they're those futuristic self-driving cars that don't need people in them? Anyway, Black Adam has something for all ranges when fighting with his electric powers. Up close, he can do his lightning cage, where he slams the ground in rage to surround himself in lightning. Mid-range, he has the Palpatine hands to zap ya. And for distance, he can dive kick with lightning. Then for all distances, he has a flurry of attacks. He has his black magic, which forms a cloud of lightning around his opponent, his lightning bombs, which explode whenever they feel like it, and his lightning strike, where he forms a cloud above himself and fires a lightning bolt jolt to trip up his opponent. You would think with this almighty magical power, he would do something a bit less trivial with a full storm cloud than just trip up his opponent like he's throwing a banana peel. But I guess it's also a testament to how precise he can be with his powers, so who am I to judge? Finally, he has a trait where he can summon balls of light around him that simply hurt you when they touch you. Not to mention, Black Adam looks like he wants nothing to do with his opponent as he fights them, just flicking his hands out as if he wants to go back to his crossing arms pose as soon as possible. All these attacks and mannerisms combined for one cool, yet done with it all, fighter.
Black Adam wins.
Number 8. Victor from Darkstalkers. You would think with how lightning brings Frankenstein's monster to life in the story, he'd utilize it in more media that he's featured in, but I guess Victor is just that revolutionary. He's a clear reference parody of Frankenstein's monster, but his creator was not a mad scientist. He was actually a benevolent dude, a glad scientist if you will. Dr. Guggenheim was known for medical research, and he was forced into hiding after he was slandered by his constituents. This ended up making him more of a parallel to Dr. Frankenstein, having to now work in an underground lab, but still keeping his moral outlook in life. Victor was one of his last creations when he was ill, who he made from unspecified materials. It's implied that Victor's not made of body parts like Frankenstein's monster, and it's just a bunch of cells and scientific waves put together. It just so happens that he looks like a bunch of body parts sewn together because, well, he's a parody of the monster. He has to look like that by design. His main reason for fighting is to simply test his strength, nothing too fancy. Victor has always been a character who's off to the side of the main plot, so he's never had much of a reason to be on the roster other than to have fun, be a weird grappler, and punch things. Though he later got a heartwarming aspect to his story involving one of the Doctor's other creations, so it's not just brute force with him. And he definitely brings some weird things to the grappler style moveset, being his electricity and how he pumps up certain parts of his body with it. All of his most aggressive attacks use lightning. He can do some of the regular grappler things like lots of throws, but he'll electrify them when necessary. I like how some of his attacks really show him exerting pressure to push the electricity out of his body. Like his veins pop out. I like that detail since it shows he's really trying hard to make his hits as powerful as possible. He fills his legs, arms, and even head with electricity, which he can also enlarge because it's Darkstalkers and body morphing happens like that. The electricity can also be transferred to his butt, and then he can hit his opponent with it. I'm not sure who felt that this monster needed butt-centric attacks, but that person is a genius. He even has an enhanced version of the attack where he can grab his opponent with each individual cheek and just transfer the electricity into them full force. I don't know what Dr. Guggenheim was hoping for with these enhancements, but it makes for one of the most unique attacks in fighting games. Look out, Mika. Number 7, Pikachu in Super Smash Bros. Also Pokken. It's Pikachu, what do I even need to say about him? Everyone knows him, everyone loves him. He may be a small rodent, but he takes down competition of any size. He's not so much strong as he is fast, one of the fastest in the game, so his lightning fast reflexes make up for his lack of physical strength. But beyond that, we know Pikachu for his electricity. He's the most popular electric type Pokemon for a reason. I mean, it is helped out by the fact that he's the Pokemon mascot and Ash's best friend, so he's kind of on all Pokemon media already, but even without that, his combination of adorableness and being surprisingly badass make him hard to ignore. You mainly get small thunder shocks and big thunder bolts with Pikachu. Everything else electric with him is combined with his speed and physical movements, so Pikachu finds plenty of ways to add a jolt to his hits. Just look at how he styles on his opponent as he spins and shocks in the air while descending. He's cool, cute, and smart. You might as well add in that his attacks are tough and beautiful too, and he's ready for any of those Pokemon contests. Producing electricity is basically second nature for Pikachu, so he doesn't need to exert any extra energy on it, and can focus on running around like a speedster and being cute for the camera instead.
Game!
Pikachu wins!
Number 6. Thor in the Marvel vs. Capcom series. Similar to the Injustice entry, Marvel vs. Capcom has two pretty big electricity users that originated in Marvel Comics, being Storm from the X-Men and Norse god of thunder Thor from the Avengers. Storm is my favorite of the two and has more fighting game appearances, but I think I'll use my logic for my Cryomancers in fighting games list, where Iceman ultimately got the spot over Storm, mostly because he specializes in ice, while Storm is so great at her weathercraft that she has the elements of wind, ice, and electricity in her moveset equally, creating a beautiful variety playstyle. So with that logic, I'll give the spot to Thor since he only specializes in lightning. Technically, he's a master of two things, lightning and hammers, but usually lightning is still involved when the hammer is out. Thor is a power style moveset, where you're hitting your opponent so hard with every lightning charge strike that there's a lot of hit stun on his attacks. You'll be recovering slowly after being hit by everything from him. They wanted to emulate getting hit by Thor's hammer as much as possible with his moveset. He puts mighty in all of his attack names for a good reason. He'll charge at you, slam his hammer downwards, or just grab you and make you the slamming subject, all electrified. Also, he has Mighty Spark. It's a projectile beam, delivers what you'd expect. And he must have heard that Storm makes tornadoes and lightning, since he combined those into one attack. As with many heavy hitter characters, he's pretty slow to start up his attacks. It's a burden carrying all his huge muscles. But he also gets the benefit of having the most health of any character in the game, so if a combo can take out Thor, you know it has to be tough. That is, if Thor doesn't take you out first.
Feel heaven's wrath! Mighty punish! My KO! You win!
Number 5. Iron Tager from BlazBlue. Tager is another electric grappler, but he focuses more on electromagnetism. The scientist Kokinoe rebuilt him as the cyborg you see today to prevent him from dying. She had her own plans in mind of how to turn him into a powerhouse, but she still let him retain his humanity, minus some of the potentially traumatic memories that he forgot about. Being a calm and serious man, Tager came out of this cybernetic surgery ready to help with anything that fit under his umbrella of morals. If he didn't like what you were doing, he'd be blunt with you. And by helping, I mean he'll use his 550 kilograms of pure muscle and/or iron to pulverize whoever needs to be pulverized. Besides slamming his opponents into the ground, he uses his cybernetic enhancements to essentially turn his opponent into a living magnet. Now you might be asking, magnets, how do they work? Well, Tager lights up his giant fists and pumps the electromagnetic waves into his opponent. Now that they're magnetized, this allows Tager to pull them in if they try to run away or escape his combos. With all the metal on his body, it's easy for him to trigger that magnetic pull. But if you want to lean more towards the electric rather than the magnetism in his moveset, he still has attacks for that. He can store pure electricity in his gauntlets. This allows him to shoot a ball of electricity, or just let it discharge to surround his arms in lightning. He can either scattershot the electricity, or just let it sit on his arms to make his throws more shocking, and with how heavily he relies on his massive arms for his whole moveset, dealing with his strong grip and high voltage is a combination for defeat.
想定の範囲内だ。
Tager, win!
Number 4. Kai from Guilty Gear. Kai's been featured on a few of my lists. We've discussed his fatherhood, family, and role as the deuteragonist. He shares those protagonist duties with pride. I guess the part of his backstory that's most relevant to his lightning powers is he's both a skilled swordsman and has mastered all 5 elements of magic, but prefers to primarily focus on his lightning magic. And that's the kind of favoritism that will get you far on this this list. He combines his weapon talents and lightning love with his Thunder Seal sword, which makes all of your lightning magic stronger, but only works if you're a true master, which Kai is, so we're good. Each slash of his Thunder Seal leaves the opponent electrified for a second so Kai can keep moving. He's also acrobatic, so he puts on a light show as he attacks. Then of course he has lightning projectiles, which come out at all angles. And because he's still a flashy character, he does a lot with a single lightning blast. He can also occasionally create shapes with the lightning if he so desires, but in wanting to get the job done fast, a straight lightning strike will suffice, or a lightning slash, depends on where you're standing. Number 3, Blanka from Street Fighter. Blanka's electricity powers are messy and wild, just like him, so I guess fitting is a good way to describe the powers. He just squats down in place and emits electricity until he doesn't feel like doing it anymore, or until someone hits him with something that can get by his aura of electricity. And that's basically everything for his powers. He can get angry and shock the ground the whole way through, but it always comes back to just naturally emitting electricity from his body. No fancy shapes, no pinpoint accuracy, just some old-fashioned shock value. But he was the first electrifying character in fighting games, so he didn't need to do much to impress us. He established how to shock someone in a fighting game, so his legacy drives him on this list. His other attacks mainly involve him being a savage, usually where he rolls up into a ball at all angles. Sometimes he even adds a bit of electricity to it, but he generally likes to keep these techniques separate from each other. But where did he learn to do all this, specifically the electricity? Well, he was lost in a Brazilian jungle as a child, so he was raised by the wild. This included swimming in electric eel-infested waters that mutated his body to harness their electrical abilities. Some old manuals wrote that he actually learned the electricity from the electric eels, so I'm not sure if he just watched and said, "Hey, let me try that." But the important part is eels were always involved. Despite his appearance, Blanka is actually a gentle and kind man. He loves his mom, who found him after he was lost, and he's friends with anyone who won't treat him like he's scary. Blanka just wants to sell little plushies of himself. Does this man look dangerous to you? Blanka tends to be late to the party a lot, as in he hardly ever shows up on the first version of a new Street Fighter roster. I'm not sure if that's a testament to a lower popularity ranking among some of the other initial Street Fighter 2 characters, or if his lesser involvement in the main plot makes him a lower priority in some of the more story-driven games. In Street Fighter Alpha, he didn't appear until the third version of it. In Street Fighter V, he wasn't included until the arcade edition. Street Fighter EX excluded him from the first game, he was on-disc DLC for Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and he wasn't even in Street Fighter 3, which was more focused on new characters anyway, so that's understandable. He also missed out on all the Marvel crossovers, but was in the SNK ones, so I guess that's a trade-off. Of Street Fighter games, this leaves his initial game, Street Fighter 2, and Street Fighter 4, which had every character from the initial Street Fighter 2 roster, as the only Street Fighter games that had Blanka from the start. In his absence, there's still generally been an electric dude on the roster, like Necro or Laura, but despite his simplicity and the electric competition, Blanka tends to find a way back to almost every roster at some point, showing these newcomers the classic electrical wild style. Number 2, Benimaru from the King of Fighters. Benimaru is another deuteragonist with electricity powers. I guess electricity makes for a good co-star. However, unlike Kai, whose family is a focal point of Guilty Gear, Benimaru's story is not particularly front and center in the King of Fighters lore. As discussed on my secondary protagonist list, he's generally involved in the main plot lines because he's on a team with the default main character, or a team conflicting with the main character, making him relevant regardless of who's leading the plot. He's most well known for being a part of the team of the original protagonist, Kyo, initially just because they were both among the top fighters in Japan and were participating in a team tournament that needed teams of strong fighters from each country, but later on, they were just friends and wanted to team up for old time's sake. While his hand-to-hand combat skills probably got him on the team, his electricity moves are ultimately what drive him to success. Benimaru pulsates with electricity for his most offensive attacks, whether it's shocking you with 100+ volts from a distance, or injecting the electricity right into your veins. And he adds style to everything. His movements, the electricity, even his clothing. He's got a lot of outfits. Do you like the tank top, the jacket, the leopard print, or maybe that shirt that makes him look even more like a Polnareff reference than he already is? However, his hair is not elevated like that normally. It's actually long and flowing when not in the ring. It's just all that static electricity that makes his hair stand up, and it takes quite a while to get that shock out of his system.
See you.
Honorable mentions: Yu Narukami from Persona 4 Arena, Nico from Dead or Alive 6, and Kaede from The Last Blade. You're all still winners in my book. If this was a top 15, you'd all be in. And if there was no 1 per series restriction, I'd also add Necro, Laura, Storm, and Shazam to that top 15. Wait, that would be 17 then. I guess remove Shazam and one of the Street Fighter ones, maybe? Yeah, let's just go to the number 1 pick. Hold it! Wait, I just realized as I was editing this that I didn't include anyone from the Mishima family from Tekken. Their electric martial arts technique is literally called Electric God Wind Fist. Heihachi can perform an electric noogie for the ultimate bullying tactic. The Mishima family's electric fists may not be as excessive as other characters on this list, given how little electricity they ultimately produce, but they're among the most iconic part of the family's moveset. Okay, now to number 1. For number 1, I couldn't even resist putting him on the thumbnail since he's so synonymous with electrical powers to me. One of the first in fighting games. Number 1, Raiden, aka the Thunder God from Mortal Kombat. Raiden is generally third in line as the most iconic Mortal Kombat character, right behind Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Besides those two, Raiden is the only other character who has appeared in the complete version of every main series game, only missing the first 2 editions of Mortal Kombat 3 until finally appearing in Mortal Kombat Trilogy. So that would mean he's actually the most reoccurring character not wearing a ninja-inspired outfit looking at his overall appearance. Raiden's legacy did kind of sneak in on us when we were too busy watching the Scorpion Sub-Zero conflict and watching Earthrealm prevent Outworld from invading. What I like about Raiden's role in guiding Earthrealm is how much his personality has varied over the years while still being the same character in general. In the first game, Shang Tsung invited him to participate in the Mortal Kombat tournament on his island, and Raiden took a human form to join the tournament for the sole purpose of showing us feeble humans what the power of a god is like. If he won, we would actually get the bad ending, where Raiden gets bored of this silly mortal tournament and invites other gods to participate for a challenge, causing a lifelong battle to ensue and ultimately destroying the world in the process. Have a nice day. He was almost a chaotic neutral. That personality has since been retconned.
Raiden wins. Fatality.
Mortal Kombat 2 was more focused on transitioning Raiden to his lawful good role, where he sees that Shao Kahn's threat is worthy of his intervention and uses his powers to protect Earthrealm by traveling to Outworld, not having his arrogance from the first tournament. Mortal Kombat 3 was when he was fully in his Protector of Earthrealm mode, where he was technically banned from intervening due to his role as a god and the conflict actually being in Earthrealm, which is why he was not on the initial roster, just offering words of advice in the game's intro. He eventually was able to join the fight since he gave up his immortality status, but got it back in Mortal Kombat 4, so everything's okay. Then he became an Elder God for about 5 minutes in that game, but stepped down when Liu Kang was killed in the Deadly Alliance plotline. After that, when trying to prevent the return of the Dragon King the old-fashioned heroic way, his body was destroyed in the process. When he pulled himself together, his essence was corrupted corrupted, and he turned into Dark Raiden, who surprisingly was not an evil version of Raiden. I know, crazy. He was still lawful good, but believed in a more severe punishment for those who put Earthrealm in danger, which I thought was a nice twist, instead of just making him evil because evil. And then we reached the end of the original timeline, where Raiden was the only guy who could save it by sending a message to his past self to prevent Shao Kahn from winning the Armageddon Gauntlet by having him win a different invasion which would have ultimately gotten him killed instead. The only problem is Raiden sent the incredibly vague message of he must win to his past self. Since he only had like 2 seconds to send the message before dying, it didn't have the time to say the extra syllables specifying that Shao Kahn was the he and the win was one of his invasions. This created the alternate current timeline where we solidified Raiden's personality as the knowledgeable mentor who took everything seriously. A lot of people give Mortal Kombat 2011 Raiden flack for making the wrong decision every step of the way when he tried deciphering the incredibly vague message, but I like to give him a bit more credit. What else are you supposed to do when your future self tells you to do something different or else the world will die, other than trying to do something different? It's just that every mistake Raiden makes leads to someone dying each time. Then again, it was still Raiden giving the vague message in the first place, so maybe calling him the Blunder God was a good nickname. So after accidentally getting half the cast killed, he tries to solve things by fighting the forces of the Netherrealm that rose because of it, including the mind-controlled zombies of his former allies, who push him around like a bunch of middle school bullies. Oops, bumped ya. Oops, bumped you again. Next, Raiden turns dark but not evil again, but then the story does nothing with it to immediately turn him back to normal. Not sure why they ultimately made that decision, but hey, it's still the same Raiden with your same thunder flavor. Looking at his moveset, Raiden really is the embodiment of the more things change, the more they stay the same, since you're always guaranteed some classic moves with Raiden in any iteration. He's got his basic lightning ball, the electric teleport, and probably his most well-known move, the electric fly, which people mostly remember since when doing it, he says the iconic video game catchphrase of
Get over here!
Wait, wrong one. There we go. People always like to guess what he's saying with that. My favorites are, I just broke my leg! Buy me lemonade! Get in the car! Over the years, they've added some more elaborate attacks to his repertoire, but the classics are always the best for me. Though some of his more detailed attacks do feel like what I'd expect from a god, like when he makes you walk for him just using his electricity. The fact that he can just deliver a lightning storm's worth of electricity right into your body should be enough to teach you not to mess with this god. Despite his judgment errors, there's no doubt that Raiden is my top electric fighting game character.
Fatality.
Now, what did you think? Did all these entries shock you, or did some fizzle out? Which characters would you have included that were not on the list? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.